Perfect. Okay. Beautiful. Well, I appreciate everybody taking the time. I know there's probably still people filtering in here, but I think we can get started with introductions at least. Uh, uh, Dave Hayes, I'm the founder of Juno, CPA, ran my own practice. Actually, I can now say this publicly, sold it to Evan's practice, ironically, small world in that way. But I really wanted like an early adopter of Juno. To take inherit my practice for selfish reasons, and also was excited. There's one quick comment I'll make. I'm excited to get like closer to the wealth management piece because I do think you're going to see an increasing consolidation of those services, and I really like their vision. But anyway, so Evan Stitch, who's at Compound Wealth. A great kind of mid-sized firm. They actually bought five firms this year, which is pretty wild. Evan, I don't know how you're still standing
I'm
after
sitting.
doing all of that. Yeah, that's a good point. But sitting upright at
Yeah.
least.
Yeah.
But so Evan's on as I always want to have an actual practitioner on as well. And then we're also joined by Cameron Momeni. I literally cannot help but call you Mo Money now. It's stuck in my head. Uh, but Cameron is at K1x, so that's what we're going to be talking about today. So he's a VP of Solutions Engineering and a CPA as well. Really, really knowledgeable about taxes. So super excited to have both these guys join. Yeah, anything you guys want to say off the bat here?
No, no, nothing from me, Dave, other than what you already said. Work at Compound Wealth, and we just merged, acquired, Dave's firm, and have a lot of real world experience with Juno, and so super excited to be here to talk about K1x and that integration. So thank you.
Yep, our pleasure. And Cameron, do you want to talk a little bit about your role at K1x?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, super excited about introducing this partnership. I really think it's going to go places. Yeah, so I'm 17 years in the business, and my role here at K1X was product manager on the products for a long, long time, almost a decade. And now I'm kind of doing this sort of stuff. So just really excited to be here. I'm hoping everybody on our call gets super excited as well as we kind of roll through our content.
I love it. Perfect. Um, all right. So yeah, what we're trying to do here, we it's funny we show this slide every time is really drive an evolution here of the way we prepare and review tax returns. And I think, for those of you, many of the people on this call are Juno customers, so you probably have some awareness already. But we started with the basic data entry, right? And now with this partnership, and we'll talk a lot more about this momentarily, but we're expanding into some of the most complex forms. And one thing that I've always loved about K1X that came out of an accounting firm and that came out of a background of like complex K1s. And in a smaller practice like mine, we've got some K1 packets, but we don't see like thousands of them on an annual basis. And I remember too, Evan, actually talking to Joel when I first started working with you guys, and he was like, "Hey, your K1's like you're doing okay on page one of the federal, and then everything else is a disaster, basically." It's an incredibly complex form, and I'll give you guys a fun fact that you wouldn't know unless you've tried to automate building of tax software. But there's something like 7,000 possible fields on all of the different tax documents. If you think about a combination of a code and a box number, right, as a possible value, there's something like 7 to 8,000 on every form combined. On a K1, because of the complexity specifically of the footnotes, there's also 7,000 on that one form. And I don't know, Cameron, if your team has seen something similar, but we were kind of blown away by the complexity of like all the possible values on a K1. And I just say that up front to say, why we think this is such a big deal to bring the level of sophistication on the most complex document that we deal with into a platform like Juno. But Cameron, thank you for building that product. I'm sure it took some time to go through all those possible combinations, and it makes my head spin because we spent so much time on all the other forms, and then we were like, oh my gosh, this one form has as much as everything else combined.
It's a black hole unto itself. I'm sure many of our participants remember it's 5 years ago now that our foreign issue on the K1s went from one line, 16 subline items of detail to 20 pages with
Yeah.
over 3,000 fields just on its own. And that's something that we're excited to bring that magic together for you as we kind of roll along here too.
Yeah, exactly. And okay, so I did the intro, so I'm gonna skip that. But I do want to talk just a little bit so people understand the importance of a K1. Like obviously it's a form that has a lot of both income and deduction data. It can have like it can go all over the 1040 basically, right? And it can also have treatment of different things. So you can have like, I don't know, I have somebody that a client that has like income from Lloyd's of London, there's a weird tax treaty, and we have to go do like custom adjustments basically on it across the entire tax return. So there are some like really eccentric things that come in there. But I think I also wanted to kind of mention up front that it's not as standardized as some other forms, right? On a W-2, like you just get a code and a box number, and as long as you did it correctly, dump it into the tax software in the correct field, you're done. There can be really complex adjustments that happen in the footnotes, as well as even on page one. Like if you think about, I forget which box it is, Cameron. This is your world, not mine, but 20 or 23 or something, where there's like A and J, and there's like 40 different codes just for one box. It
Yeah.
is like way above and beyond what you see on these other forms. And like the reason that's important, I just want to say out loud for small and mid-sized firms in particular, I might only see an edge case on that one client's return one time. Like I'm not sitting at a big four where I can go across the hall and say, hey, who's got someone else that has like this partnership package that's coming in and get an answer to an eccentric, like an edge case, right? And I see a lot of those on K1s as opposed to other forms that are coming in. And it also is changing every year. And I'm just not seeing enough of the data to have the confidence that we could do it really, really well. And so that's part of why I was so excited to tap into this, because it's not just that it's a complex form, it's an edge case that creates risk for your practice, that takes a lot of time if you have to go research it. That might change from year to year. Like the problem is compounding. And then the last quick thing I'll say there, and I don't know if everyone has a client that they think of when I describe this, but my most complex client, um, their K1s come in late inevitably because they're complex partnerships, right? Or private equity funds that have like all these different, state reporting. And so it ends up being a fire drill. Whenever it does come in, I have to pull somebody off everything else that's in their queue to just work on that one client, because we've told him we would like to have a 2 week turnaround on his return. And that's pretty much all we can do to get it within 2 weeks. But he's also making really large estimated tax payments. And so for a lot of reasons that you guys probably very well understand, I just wanted to start by saying like the pain isn't just in the fact that there's 26 boxes on page one of a K1. It's a bigger thing because they're big chunks of work that are really hard to process through in the midst of a smaller mid-sized practice where you don't have a ton of excess capacity in terms of staff. So anything to add there, Cameron or Evan? I think Cameron, especially, you've been working with hundreds of customers on your end that deal with this regularly. But anything else to add up front in terms of the like K1, not from a technical perspective, but from how
Yeah.
it fits into the workflow of a firm?
Yeah, from a workflow of the firm. I mean, I think you've kind of hit it spot on. It's like we all know the standard documents, W-2s, 1099s, mortgage interest statements, et cetera. Those are pretty straightforward. A few numbers to glean from the documents, maybe some analytics to go with a few of them. Nothing comes close to the complexity and length of a potential K1. And if you are all lucky, you get the very simple K1s with just a few face page numbers, maybe a statement or two. If we're unlucky, then you get the really complex hedge fund of funds, the big issuers like Blackstone, BlackRock, KKR, et cetera. And we used to joke around at the accounting firm that I worked on. You could look at K1s until you die and still find nuance within them. And that's really where the
Exactly.
power of our partnership comes into play, to just make it plain, make it simple, focus on what you need to focus on, move forward with your work. Um,
Yep.
so very
I
thrilling.
love it. I love
Mhm.
it. Evan, you're inheriting
Yeah.
some of my K1 problems. Any comments on that for how you guys deal with
we
it?
we look forward to it, and I think both of you guys hit on it that for the vast majority of K1s that you receive, they are somewhat standard, right? Like Cameron said, they're pretty basic. There's not a lot of footnotes, but there is always at least a handful of clients that you'll get a K1 late, in August, late September, and you don't know what to do with all the footnotes. It's the Wild West, and now all of a sudden you got to page through and make sure you're incorporating it appropriately. So this partnership and integration between the two is really helpful, because you just can't devote the man hours in like a smaller size firm to really understand all the footnotes that could come with one of these
That's right.
K1s, right? So it's exposure, managing that exposure, and then also while maintaining efficiency, right? Like just being
Yep.
practical. So
Yep.
yeah.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So, and then in terms of what we're looking for, time savings, right? So let's talk a little bit about K1x in terms of capabilities here, because I think this will help people understand, the potential time savings and impact that this will have on your practice. So I guess, Cameron, I'll hand it off to you if you want to go through in more detail, just kind of what you guys cover in terms of breadth of your expertise.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dave. So K1X as a business named K1X has been around for about 3 years. K1X, the products have been around for 17 years. So I briefly mentioned I came from a former top 10 CPA firm. These were the products that were built by that CPA firm and were exclusive use to that CPA firm until we spun it out into this business. And Dave, as you and I have talked about, we're all in the goal of making sure that every firm out there in the world gets access to the same level of technology that the top firms out there get. And that is what K1X is all about. We are a fast K1 document processing platform that, as you can see over there, you can do 80 documents in 8 minutes. On average, 30 to 60 seconds per K1 to read the entirety of the K1 document, process the data, place it in Juno for your benefit, or if you needed to or wanted to, you could extend into our K1 aggregator platform for further and deeper analysis. That's a separate conversation. But for here and now, it's making sure that you don't have to struggle with these forms anymore. You don't have to worry about keying them into a work paper or really dealing with trying to key them into your tax software super manually. The power of Juno and K1X is here to facilitate all of that. Well established, as you can see on this slide. And then the magic that we're bringing to you, if we move to the next slide, is that comprehensive reading. And like we just talked about, a K1 could be a simple document. Maybe you've got a real estate K1, couple of lines, net rental real estate or some other things. Maybe a small S corp with a couple of, line items, ordinary business, maybe some interest. But then everybody has those clients that walk in the door and say, hey, I've got 5 to 6 of these beefy behemoths. Can you deal with them? And of course we say, yeah, sure, why not? But we also know in the background that's going to be a severe headache. We'll do it. But here K1X is really making it super simple and easy. You're going to drag and drop your forms into Juno. You're going to get all of this good stuff for the face page that everybody has always done since forever. That's a non-issue. But all of the detail from the white paper statements, meaning those 1 through 20 AQ, just like Dave was talking about, you got the line 20 now, and it goes from A to AQ. So whatever that is, like 40 some odd line items. And they're just becoming more and more detailed lately. It's not like anybody's putting less information on these K1s. Regulations are just getting more difficult. And that means more disclosure, the whole impetus for the K3 in general, also included in the scope. So you're going to be able to see all of that white paper statement detail. When interest income lists out 5 line items, foreign sourced dividends, US based, US government, state, municipal. You're going to see all of that detail coming through. We also read all 42 state taxing jurisdiction K1s as well for the taxable income to the partners sourced to that state. California is probably the easiest one to grasp. I'm sure we've all seen it, where you've got basically the same line items of a K1, ordinary income, interest, dividends, rents, royalties, etc. But then you have to make a determination as to whether you're reading the resident component or the non-resident component, column D or E. These are things that K1X can also help differentiate and integrate into your overall work papers and workflow that Juno has set out for you, so that you're just dragging and dropping your documents and you're looking at the data in the context that you want to see it and moving on with your process without having to get it slowed down by, let me look at this 50-page document and see what components I need to pull out to figure out how to move forward. The bonus items that we bring to the table are also things like unrelated business income, if you happen to be dealing with that for any reason. 189A, which we know is a super hot topic. We'll read 189A statements for the most part. And 926 statements, those pesky footnotes where you have to aggregate up the data across all of your investments, determine if it hits a filing threshold, and then determine whether there's even a filing required. That in and of itself is a headache on its own, especially if you end up with a K1 with 20, 30 of these transactions. The next one has 20 or 30 of these things. You don't want to deal with that manually. That's where the power of K1X is bringing to the table automatic extraction of that information and consolidation of that data. The last one on this list is when you get one K1, and real estate is notorious for this, and they've got 50 properties underneath, and they choose to give you the P&L for each of those properties as an activity statement. That's no longer just one K1. might as well be 51 K1s because you're going to have to enter each of that data separately anyway. K1x has the power to read those individual statements as well and bring the information separately to the table so that you can deal with those activities as if they were K1s themselves. All of this to say, though, it is not the silver bullet that you just drag and drop and walk away and wipe your hands clean. Everything still needs a validation step. We would not be CPAs if we weren't performing our diligence. You still need to look at the data. You still need to make sure the data is reasonable and accurate to your client's circumstance, but you don't have to sit behind hours of data entry to just get it sorted into a format where you can now review. We're bringing instant review to the table by taking care of all the data underneath, giving you a UI to be able to manage and manipulate the data and sending it on straight to the tax return. And that really gives you three key benefits. You no longer have to deal with your own work papers. Juno can produce them for you. You don't have to worry about finding the risk that, I don't know, does this taxpayer have a New Jersey filing? I got a New Jersey K1, but they're a California resident. Not quite sure what to do. K1x and Juno will help work through those types of steps. And it is a universal collaborative platform for not just K1 analysis now with the power of Juno, but all of your tax returns, that everyone is working on the same standardized platform. So if you're a small firm of 1, 2 people, maybe 5 people, you're all on the same page. If you're a larger firm, 15, 20, 25 people, now you don't have to worry about everyone doing their own thing and somebody trying to pull it all together. It's a single, standard, streamlined, efficient way to move forward with all of your tax documents. And as I've said over and over, we're really excited to bring that power into Juno kind of as we go along.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I'm excited as well. And I think, Cameron, you're better at that than I am. I want to echo from from an overall architecture perspective. I say this all the time. I probably sound like a broken record, but I think it's really important that everyone understand, like, the way we think about building technology in the era of AI with accounting is exactly what Cameron said just a moment ago, which is you're going to work side by side with a system that automates parts of your work, and you're going to be the final checkpoint. People sometimes misunderstand that, right? Where they come in and they're like, oh, I have to like validate this. And I'm like, well, that's the sign of a good system, actually, is when it makes it clear to you where you need to spend your time validating. And I'll show you that in the work papers here momentarily. But I think it's really important that accountants get used to working side by side with an AI system of some sort. That's what we're trying to build at Juno. There's going to be other systems, right? Like you have AI features now flowing into some of your practice management software. Cameron was just talking about this with K1x, right? In terms of how you're thinking through, especially some of like the 926 statements as an example, right? Something kind of exceptional where you have to make adjustments. But having to work on something alongside a system is not a sign of failure. It's a sign of success when it's designed well. And that is very much our philosophy at Juno. I'll give you a funny example. Like when you have RSUs and you've got basis coming off a W-2, as an example, it could be multiple periods, right? Like they might have sold stock this year. I see it on a brokerage statement. I don't know where the basis came from. Well, I know it's an RSU. It came off the W-2, but I don't know which year it came from. I don't know which lots they sold, right? I could specific ID that if I want to change their tax basis, or I could use different methods to do that. But the point there that I just want to make is there are certain things an AI system is never going to solve, because either it's a multi-period issue or because there's discretion that needs to happen there in how I pick the basis of those shares in that particular case, and that's just one of many. But the point that I want to make there is, our vision is to automate the things that can be automated effectively with transparency and accuracy, right? So we started with like the very basic documents. Now you expand to a much, much more complex documents with K1s. I love this slide. Like I could spend all day looking at this because I'm so excited about spending less time on some of these things with certain clients, because this is thousands of dollars of work. Like if you think about my folks that have the K1 packets, and their cost of a return versus a return that does not have those K1 packets, it's thousands and thousands of dollars every single year, right? And if we can automate something like 90% of that work, then that is delivering thousands of dollars of value per client on an annual basis. So it is a very, very big deal to be able to do this, and we're moving fast. Right. So adding K1s is a massive step forward. My team is also working on taking more from the organizer as we go through this tax season. So we've already started doing like medical and charitable contributions. Now we're starting to take less structured data, like, oh, what if they say they had a child this year, or what if they say they got married, and can we start to pull that in? And then we use the binder basically as a translation layer between the preparer and the system itself to tell you what we've done. And I'll show you that momentarily. But I just wanted to echo what he was saying in terms of the architecture and like how we think about the philosophy of designing these systems, which is that it should extract things. It should also alert you when it's not confident on something. It should give you like the raw data so that you can make adjustments if you want to do that. And we see a lot of alignment between what K1x has done here with this system and what we are doing with Juno. So, Evan, any comments there or perspective as a, now that you guys have been about to get year two of Juno going?
No, nothing in particular. I think it's just really exciting to see some of the time savings that we could potentially have, late in the year after we receive a K1 late or last minute. We know it's coming. We
Yeah.
don't know what the footnotes are going to look like. To have some of the time savings on those white paper statements is just really exciting. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So I love
Yep.
it.
Absolutely. I see
Can
some raised hands too. Hold on one second. Let me just get the chat up so I can actually pay attention if people are asking questions. So I think we will probably use bear with me, I'm going to stop sharing and reshare in just a second. I just want to take a look at chat real quick. Perfect. Okay, my team is going to be responding to things in chat as well as we go, just so we don't have to, make everything super choppy. I'm going to jump into actually showing you K1x. This is live in our product already. We are big fans of like launching things quickly. And so we've already made it live in the product. And I just want to make sure that there's nothing here that I need to go through. Yeah, we will send a recording out for folks. And in terms of basis, okay, I have actually Travis has a question on basis that I do want to talk about. So I don't know. I've made a decision that I think is the wrong decision here that I will just be upfront with people about, which is we don't override like basis on the K1 entries. And the reason we decided to do that, and Cameron, I'm actually dying for your opinion on this. I should have asked you before this,
Yeah.
is because you make basis adjustments, right? And so I didn't want to override it automatically on what's coming in on the K1 because there are times where I've made adjustments and I don't want it just to nuke that field. And just one quick comment on that for the audience. You hope that that's reported correctly, but in case that it's not, it can have a really material impact on the taxability of income or losses for your client. And so my philosophy is like people should know where we're putting data and where we're not. And you'll see that in our work papers and the way it's designed. But that is one field that we chose not to overwrite at the moment. And I have had a few clients recently come in and say, hey, why aren't you pushing data into this field? It was a strategic decision, but that is one that I'm also listening to users and trying to figure out if we should go the opposite way on that. My initial inclination, though, was just not to overwrite everything without because if you've made custom calculations, I don't want to go delete that automatically and then have you like have to go find it in the prior year return, right? And go through all of that. So we chose not to overwrite that field. That is one that we have just chosen not to map to. We do extract it and it's right there. And it even says on the work paper, we did not push this into your software, but here is the beginning and the ending, capital balance basically. Anyways, Cameron, are we wrong on
Yeah.
that? That's hot take
No,
here. Cameron, Evan, have we
100%
done this
aligned.
incorrectly? What are we doing here, guys?
Absolutely not. No, no, no. We take the same position, and I totally agree with the philosophy. I mean, just reinforcing what you just said. Your tax return is always meant to be the pristine final thing that you send to the IRS. We are stewards of data. You are the controller of how that data ends up on the tax return. We'll make some best decisions, but we're not going to be able to make every decision right for every single client in every single circumstance. K1x is also taking the same position. We don't write tax basis information. However, I will say just one extension that we did make. If folks choose to tack on the K1x product on top of Juno for deeper K1x and for deeper K1 analysis, multiple tax bases is something that we accommodate in our system so that you could track AMT, adjusted 704, whatever alternate basis you want in real time without having to create a work paper for it. Simply a tracking mechanism to do exactly what you just described. You need to know what the basis is. You're not necessarily directly inputting it into the tax return. Rather, it's an indicator of other positions you might take. So we go the same route.
Yeah. Evan, does that make sense for you guys?
Yeah. Yeah. It's nice to have the optionality to track it and include it, but also not to have it just default like, your basis is
Yeah.
wrong.
That's
Like,
right.
Exactly.
because
Well,
that
that's
just
kind of what I worry
creates
about,
more
right? It's like
work.
you
Yeah.
put all
Yeah.
this work in last year, and someone's got to go back to the work papers and figure out what the
Yeah.
starting
Yeah.
basis should have been from
Yeah.
last year's work. It just felt to me like let's not just overwrite this field. But great feedback. And so people can also like at any time, guys, you can send feedback via like support@juno.tax. Like we're constantly listening to feedback from our users on what we can do more effectively. This would be one that I think we probably won't include, but it's just literally a choice. We could put it in an hour or something. Like I could have an engineer map to that field in the different tax software. It's more just a strategic choice. But the philosophy is the ability to have transparency on what we are overwriting. I don't want to just hit every field in the software because people won't know where to look to review the work that we're doing. But there are times where we could be wrong. And so you can, hear how open I am to that. And there have been times where people I always give this one example of like someone came with New York and New Jersey wage reporting, and they were like, hey, if they work out of state, then the state wages for New York or New Jersey needs to be the sum of all states, and you need to add back healthcare in certain scenarios. And we actually went and built that into our product. So we don't report if you have out of state wages in New York and New Jersey. We'll tell you on the work paper, we made this adjustment based on this tax law. But it's built in now. And so I just give that as an example of like, we had a user come to us who said, hey, you're reporting what's on the W-2, but that's not how you report this. You should report it this way. We researched it. We built it in there. And now you never have to train like a junior staff member in New York and New Jersey or wherever you are. Because I can tell you my team would have done that wrong being in California. We had no idea this rule existed. And so as you guys give us that type of feedback, we make the product better and better. And we will actually make it easier for your junior tax preparers. And then in that scenario too, we make a comment on the adjustment that we made on the work paper so that you got it in your tax binder, right? And that actually is people will say like, well, how are we going to train young people to do tax returns? And I'm like, this is better training than I had. I had to walk down the hallway and go ask somebody how to do something when I didn't see it. And like, that's terrible training because they're super busy during tax season and they don't want to answer my questions. And so instead, I would like Google it and try to figure out if I can find an answer to something. We're building a lot of that into our system. And I just get excited about this stuff because we're going to do that 1,000 times over the next couple years. And then the complexity that we have all had to learn of like in the scenario where you have this code in this box, it needs to be entered this way, like that will start to flow through our system automatically. And we will tell you because we're a transparent system, like we made this adjustment, here's why. So that you can override it obviously if you want to. But some of those simple things we can just build in from a logic perspective into the way that we map into tax software. So that's where we're trying to go. Yeah, people are saying they learn these things by hand. Also, like remember how many times as someone who has a lot of empathy for my junior tax preparers, like you don't just have to tell that person that rule one time. Like there were these 5 scenarios. We had a very nice client who sent us a very long email of all the like hypothetical logic that applied in this one scenario. And it was like 2 pages long. So imagine how many conversations you have to have with a junior staff member to get that right. It is not a one time, okay, now I've got it. Thank you so much. I can move forward. This would be like 10 conversations. And that's just one little feature in there. So what I want to say to everybody is like, please overwhelm us with feedback. We love the feedback and our team is constantly going through that to see how we can improve our product. And we'll be doing that throughout tax season. And then we'll use the work paper. And I'm going to jump over to this now as a way of describing to you kind of what adjustments we're making so that we've got transparency in there. So let me switch over to that just here real quick. I can show you. um, I've run a return just in advance with a couple of complex K1s. Just so you guys, I think everyone here is effectively familiar with Juno. You've at least done a trial or you are an active user. And so I'm not going to go through like the whole demo of Juno today. I think that's unnecessary, but I do want to go through like the specific K1 functionality. So this is on Preparer where you're pulling documents in. You guys are probably familiar with this. You can see I've uploaded a couple different K1s in here and then a couple other random documents as well. So, dump in everything you got for all of these clients. And in this case, like we're going to extract everything. I will say that just because I want to cover, this a little bit more broadly for you guys in terms of context, as you start to get in the beginning of tax season here, you should upload everything that is a source document for that client. You can upload emails, right? We don't necessarily process every single thing. We'll tell you, it'll say not processed here if it's a document type that we don't process. But there are documents that we don't extract data from that we do use for reviewer. And so when we go back and review, I'll give you like a couple examples there. Like if someone says they have an EB credit or they had a child this year, in reviewer, we actually create an agent based on the answer in their organizer to go look for that thing on the tax return. So if they said they had a new child, we will go and look to see if there's an additional dependent this year on the return, but we don't put that information in automatically. Again, like the philosophy here is to be a little bit conservative about that to make sure we could do it accurately. And there are times where I've had people say, like, I had a child, but their birth date is like the next year because they're filling out the organizer in late January and they had a baby in January, right? And so there are reasons why we don't want to just like blindly automate all of this. But I would say, like, upload everything and then let the system decide what it's going to process. It's built to do that. And then you guys probably are familiar with this, but this is our binder structure. Effectively, you can annotate this. We have a whole bunch of tools to annotate the fields, but what it does is create a checklist for each document. And this is going to be morphing quite a bit during tax season. But it creates a checklist and it tells you on each document what needs to be done. So if something has not been extracted, and K1s are going to have, by the way, the longest list here of anything. But if something has not been extracted and needs to be looked at, it's going to come up here. So you can see that the issue that we were talking about before in terms of like number of shares, we don't overwrite that. That's a strategic decision. Again, like we're just choosing not to overwrite some of those fields in case you've made adjustments in the past. And the same would be true in this case. They don't have like the partner basis is not pulling off the K1 for some reason, or it's not on there potentially. But that being said, like basis is normally listed here. If you have a capital account beginning and end of the year, we won't export that. We don't overwrite it in the software in case you've made adjustments to it. But we do also, there are other things that we sometimes don't pull, and you can see what page they're coming off on the K1 itself. And as we flow in, so like K1x data is already flowing into this, and we're now comparing what fields they're finding. And anything we don't export into your tax software, we will tell you right here that we've not exported it. We do see it in the document. We'll even tell you what the value is. And actually, what we're going to start to do as we get into tax season this year is start to add instructions based on your tax software of what you're supposed to do with that information, even if we don't put it in there, right? So we could say like, hey, this is shareholder number of shares. You should enter it in this field. So we're going to start to do that by tax software. We're working on that now. But just be aware that this is already custom for each type of tax software. So I think I might have this on here somewhere. Yeah, you can see I'm connected to ProConnect on this machine. It's a Mac. And so you can see that like institution name is not getting pulled off here. If you look at this comment, and I realize this is a little bit small for folks, but institution name is right here. Um, and I'm telling you, hey, we're not taking this, we're not putting this into ProConnect. There's actually not a field for institution name. There's the name of the actual account, but that's not necessarily the institution name. People use different naming mechanisms for it. So this is not being pulled and pushed into ProConnect. The same with like address on a brokerage statement. We there's no field for it in ProConnect, but we'll tell you if we're seeing data that might need to be entered that is not being entered for some reason on that document. And then let me sneak down here over to the K1 here, and I want to show you what you're looking at. So you've got the original document in here, and so let me zoom out just a bit. That's been extracted, so you can see here that I've got all the extracted data flowing in, and then I've got the checklist at the top that will tell me everything that has not been imported, right? So you can see box 17 here. You've got these codes, and let me just see. I don't know if they all got imported, but effectively that will show up here on the gathering time. Yeah, so you can see the fields that here. So like everything on page one basically has been extracted and pushed into the tax software appropriately. There are just these exceptions. And one note on that is you can see it's coming off all 10 pages because now we're including K1x data that's coming out of the footnotes in the actual extraction. And when we're not able to find a field for that, or if it's a field that we don't push into the tax software, we highlight it here on the binder. And then your team can go and check these things off if they want to, right? So that's kind of what the check marks are for. They can also make comments on here like, hey, I looked at this. and I made an adjustment from a different information coming off another form. And actually, I just did this in a demo this morning, but made a basis adjustment. This is down on the brokerage statement from an RSU. Like there was RSU income coming off a W-2, and so I made the adjustment based on the RSU. They're probably going to put that adjustment on the, either annotate it on the actual document itself on the brokerage statement, or they could put it in like an Excel document, which is actually how my firm does it. But the point I want to make here is, it's funny, there's not a ton to look at when you process a K1 here. It's just going to process and it's going to tell you it's processed correctly. And then the detail that you'll want to see is actually flowing in through the work paper. And the reason for that is meant to be our back and forth with what the system has already done and what needs to be done to finish the return. We're using that concept there. The last thing I'll say really quickly on this, and then I want to pop over and show you something in Reviewer as well, is that okay, today we're not mapping some of those fields. We just brought in K1x into this system. They've got something like 7,000 fields. I don't know, Cameron, you probably know better than I do, but I think it's around 7,000 is kind of what my team was saying. And right now we map something like, if you include the states, we probably map something like, let me think about this, 30, 50, probably like a few hundred of those, like 3, 4, 500. And we're going to be expanding that list. Know that will take some time. We'll do that over the next probably 6 or 8 weeks. And we'll continue to expand what we can automatically push into the tax software. We're just starting to work on that now. And we'll prioritize, the fields that are most common, basically, as we go through that. But we'll continue to map more and more into each type of tax software. One call out I just want to make is not every tax software has every field, right? So that's why it's super important that in the way we deal with data and the way we deal with our binder, that we're telling you what we did and did not extract. Because sometimes even if we can extract a field accurately and we know where it should go, Drake may not have a field for that. And we're going to start to pull that. We'll say we did not put this into Drake, but here are the instructions. And we'll go look in like Drake's help forums and their actual support materials to give you instructions on that particular piece of data in the scenario in which you run into that problem. So we're going to do that to be extra helpful. But some of these long tail things are actually, I mean, look, these are going to be involving humans for a long time to come because these are some of the most complex pieces of information that come into a tax return. So I'll pause there. I'm going to come back and see if there's any questions that pop up. Cameron, Evan, any comments on that?
No, go ahead, Cameron.
No, I was just gonna, kind of again back up exactly what you're saying. I mean, majority of the K1s are going to be federal and state taxable income. So that's exactly what got knocked out of the park right away. And, it seems like a pretty short timeline to me in terms of all the rest of the stuff. But that's just continuing to enhance the value to our audience here. So super exciting stuff.
And what's nice about what you showed, Dave, on there was, we use ProConnect. That's our software stack and our software that we push things into from Juno. And so to have that prompt of like, hey, we put this in there, but we didn't add a title, didn't add this. It's nice for you to be able to go through and then compare to ProConnect to get in what it is that your firm wants to do, whether it's like Morgan Stanley _ account number, right? Like
exactly.
Like
exactly.
We all have our own certain way of doing it. And so it's nice
That's
to just have that prompt to walk through. So,
people have asked us if we do put in a description there, so it's not like it throws a critical diagnostic, but we'll put in, we actually put in account name and then last 4 if there's an account number, basically. And that came from my firm because that's what we've always done. In case they have multiple Wells Fargo accounts, I want to see like 0436, and that way I know which one it's coming from. But we've had some feedback on that too. And I would just say that, like, I don't think there's one way that pleases everybody on that particular thing. And yet, like, we don't want to put in a drop down to be able to adjust those types of names because it's going to make the product harder to use, right? So at the end of the day, we're always balancing like, okay, and another example I'll give for folks on that note is like on a brokerage statement, typically we will create a new form instead of like trying to map to a prior year on that, because one, like there aren't carryovers on brokerage statements. And so there's no need to like have the comparability. Whereas like a Schedule E or a Schedule C, there's the drop down when you do export. So you can select the correct schedule to send that to, because if you've got fixed assets mapping to a particular schedule, like I've got assets on a rental property and the depreciation is mapping automatically to this property, if I overwrite it and create a new one, then I'm going to have to remap every one of those assets, right? So there are times where we are mapping to a prior year information, and that's a little bit, the way I describe that is a little bit different for each type of software. I'm just generalizing, I realize, but there are times where we map, and there are times where we don't map, and they're both thoughtful choices. A K1 is one where we do map, so we will map to the prior year. When you do export, one of the things that we do is we go in and actually pull in the information before you do your export from the tax return. And that's the way we get our mapping. So we actually will go through the actual tax return in your tax software, and we go find out like how many K1s you had last year and the name of each of those K1s. And then there's a drop down that will, for that K1 as an example, like it'll have the different types of K1s, it'll have the name of the company of that K1, and you can select the correct one and map to it. So hopefully that's clear for folks. If you have any questions on that, we can send out like an export video. You're welcome to just hit up support and say, can I see a video for this? Or you can look in the Learning Center. Actually, sorry, that'd probably be a better place to go. We do have a Learning Center with articles on all of those things. So if you want to look at matching on export, you'll be able to see that in any of the product demos that we have there. So just wanted to call that out. And then from a on reviewer, one last thing I just wanted to show for folks because I really love this feature.
Dave,
And it's something that's, oh, sorry, go ahead, Cameron. Were you going to say something?
two things. One, if you were sharing your screen, we've lost the screen share.
Yeah, I was about to reshare. Yep.
Okay. Secondly, there's a nice question in here. I might just pop in and address. People were asking about what type of Excel workpaper do we get for K1s, and I know Juno produces a very nice consolidated Excel workpaper across all your tax documents, of which K1s are a part. So they're asking specifically, is this similar to what we have at K1x? I would say it's pretty darn close in the broader context of what Juno provides and will serve you really well from a basic standpoint. If you are looking for the more detailed reports and analyses, that's where the K1x wheelhouse is, and we could have a separate conversation on those.
Yeah, I think there's a nice, just for folks to have some background here. One of the things that we were excited about is a lot of like many of our firms are small and mid-sized firms, right? We work with some really large firms as well, but that's the exception for us. This mainly I've designed this for firms like my own. My firm was like 15 people at our peak. And so we wanted this to be this is like net new technology really to be able to access K1x because traditionally they've dealt with really, really large firms. And in the overlap cases, what I would say is we're never going to try to build the full functionality of K1x into Juno. What we want to do is improve our extraction capabilities, like I just showed you, like flow it through the work papers as well, and really automate as much as we can. And I did see another question that I can address here in the middle of this, which is we will also update the Excel work papers to give you some of that raw data. I do think that's really, really helpful, and we're going to figure out how to pull that into our work papers in the next few weeks. But I don't want to try to rebuild everything that K1x has in our portal. Like there will come a time if you've got super complex K1s that are covering a bunch of states and you got to make those crazy state reconciliation worksheets. K1x is a awesome product for that. And like there will come a time where you just want to go to K1x because you've got a lot of really, really complex K1s and they've got the best product for that. So there will be a difference in the way that even though we're using their technology, we're not trying to recreate all of the functionality of their technology because we are fundamentally targeting different types of firms. And so that I just want to say that out loud. I think of this as a net new technology to our audience because historically our audience, if they're doing like I don't know 200 K1s a year or something. I mean, my firm probably does more than that, but point being like they would be much smaller than K1x has historically targeted really really large firms, and so they're even the way they go to market is not like cohesive to a tiny firm. I don't, Cameron, I might be speaking a little bit out of turn there, but I think
No,
that's not offensive to you guys. Is like listen,
no,
when somebody shows up and they're like I have 400 K1s this year, you guys are probably like that's a really tiny account. Thank you, that's cute,
yeah.
and not to say that like it's just so awesome to bring this to a new audience is my point, and to be able to do it within Juno. We're not going to try to rebuild every single thing they've done there because for small and mid-sized firms the primary thing we're trying to do is really automate the vast majority of the data entry that gets done really quickly, and that's just a slightly different need than like I'll go all the way to like a Big Four or something where they're looking at like the world's most complex K1s, and they're spending 400 hours on that return. We're in a different world here where, our folks are typically spending, a significantly smaller amount of time on the returns. And if you have super complex K1s, you can go get K1x and really experience the entire thing.
Yeah, I think that's right. We're here as an add-on if you need it, but we're integrated with you for the majority of the use cases, and that's our best position at the moment.
Yep, yep, exactly. And I think it's a net positive. One comment I'll make there is like you'll also see in the work paper if there is something really complex there that you need to pay attention to, right? That's the whole point of it, to tell you like, okay, I see this thing and I don't know where to put it automatically. You're going to have to spend some time on this. And so hopefully it will become easier to do that. And AI systems are amazing, by the way, at the research around it. So if we see something unusual, we can also what we're working on literally right now is filtering in instructions basically on how to start to think about dealing with some of those issues, which would be really helpful for your staff. Um, okay, then quickly, I wanted to show you here in Reviewer too. One of the things that we've got here in Reviewer. This is the last little thing I was going to show, and then we can take any questions that people have. Um, this is also flowing into our Reviewer product, and I wanted to just shameless plug here. Really get this on people's radar this year. This is a relatively new product. We launched it, I think, in October for the first time. And I really am bullish on this being what is probably actually the very best part of our entire product. And we basically took like what a reviewer does when they go through a tax return, and we built it in with like agents in AI. And the point here that we're making is like what keeps me up as a firm owner is making mistakes, right? But using a human to go through a multi-hundred page document like a tax return that has thousands or even sometimes like tens of thousands of numbers on it or fields of data is kind of insane. And then comparing it to like the prior year and hoping that you catch any exceptional items, like it's a really, really flawed process. And it's a big part of why a lot of our processes are like duplicated or even tripled, basically, right, in the industry. And we can use AI to really help with that because we can quickly build, and this is what we've done with this system, thousands of agents that go and look at individual fields on every single tax return. Like they don't get tired, and we can throw as much processing power as we want at this. Think of this as like 500 little interns. And we train them on one very specific piece of tax law. Like this is how you report wages off a W-2. And then it goes and scans every field to make sure that it's presented correctly on the 1040. So that's what we're doing. You pull in the tax return when you're done preparing it, and it will go through and find exceptions. And just really quickly, I know this is not meant to be an end-to-end demo, but it goes from source to return, first making sure all the data got into the return. Then it's the gotcha checks. These are like logical things on the return that you need to pay attention to. And then there's a year-over-year analysis, year-over-year document comparison, and an organizer checklist. Each of those basically go through different ways of finding potential errors or patterns that you need to be aware of as a reviewer. Like, oh, your income went way up, but your withholdings did not go up as much on a percentage basis, right? That would be something you could see in the year-over-year analysis. And then I'll show you just one example that I love to use on the K1 specifically. And this is going to get blown out a ton because of the amount of data we're going to have from K1x. But I love this one because I don't think my staff would find it typically, which is this person has a K1 coming in from an LLC. There's a shareholder loan that it gives you the beginning and ending balance of that loan, but there's no interest computed, which would be a deduction, right, potentially on this LLC. And so it's just saying, hey, you should review this to see if you should have imputed interest basically on this loan. I know that might seem like a minor thing, but I love the fact that our system is looking at the level of detail to review every little thing. And again, like we have on the gotcha checks alone, something like three or 400 agents trained on very specific things like K1 reporting on an LLC. And they will go through like really specific issues. The goal here is not necessarily to say there's an error on the return. It's to flag exceptions that you need to look at. And another example would be like it flags anytime there's penalties of any sort on the return. It flags any sort of like trades with no basis get flagged here as an exception. And the goal here is for your preparers on your staff to go through this first and do a better job of self-review by going through this. So I know we call it reviewer. I know many reviewers have been doing this for a long time. And so they kind of like know the way that they like to do it. And so this could be an input for your review if you are a reviewer. But if you're a preparer, the first, doing this return for the first time and you're junior and you're looking at some like edge cases that you're not familiar with, this is a great way of highlighting things that you need to look at on the return. So just wanted to make that comment. And the K1 data is also going to be flowing in here as well, and we'll be blowing this out over the next few weeks. So again, like K1x is live right now in the product. You can extract data from K1s. It's going to do an amazing job. Right now, we're already exporting federal and state data from page one. And then we are going to start to add footnote fields into our mapping into the tax software. But even right now, if we don't export something, just to like say this again at the risk of being repetitive here, we will put it in the work papers already. And so you can see extracted fields that have not made it into your tax software. So you have an understanding of what it is that you need to do to finish the reporting for that particular K1. So that's what I wanted to cover. I know, Cameron, Evan, anything I have not mentioned that we we want to bring up here? And then we can
No,
switch over to questions.
nothing that you haven't mentioned, but I think I would love to add a personal anecdote here. There it was, and I'm going to put the emphasis on was, a startup company that came out of Silicon Valley, gathered themselves tens of millions of dollars of funding, and wanted to go do what you just showed. And after 4 years, they have done nothing. This is the
Yep.
first real example of exactly what everybody was looking for. I want to be able to see a review tax return using AI, using a software platform. And it's so exciting to see something like this coming to the market. So that's all I wanted to add. It's just,
Yep.
it's awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I just want to say too, I mean, folks like Evan and his firm that came in early when our product was a million miles behind where it is today. And one thing that's really great is they still saw a return on that. We kept everybody that used us last year, which we're really proud of. They saw a return even though we were doing a lot less last year, like a whole lot less last year than we are doing this year. And then they gave us feedback on what we were doing well and what we were not doing well, and that is so important for us. Like, I am the founder, I started this for my own firm, and but my firm does everything a very specific way, and so I'm always telling people, like, don't hesitate to over communicate to us. We take that feedback really seriously, and we try to, like, across our entire team, we try to be really thoughtful about that feedback. Even our support team, like, they are US based accountants, they have all worked at bigger firms, big or small firms actually, but they've worked in actual tax jobs. And we're doing the opposite of the rest of the industry, where it's like just outsource it to offshore and save money on support. Like, I want you to be able to get to a person on my support team if you want to, because I want to gather the feedback that you have. Because you might be seeing a bug, but you might also be seeing something that's just confusing that we can improve for the rest of our users. So I appreciate, Evan and his crew and all the folks that came on early with us. And we will, I promise you, like, we're only going to get better as we get more feedback from our customers. And we will listen to that really seriously. We can't always do all of it, but we will listen to it very carefully. And if we think it's going to help everybody, we'll make a real effort to do it quickly. Evan, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say that the product, over the past year definitely has gotten better from what we've seen. And that's largely due to anytime we try to break Juno, we reach out to support and we let them know, hey, here's what we did in case that's our bad. And then here's
Yeah.
what we got in case that maybe there could be a fix. And
Yep.
the
That's right.
response has been great. Your team has been awesome. And that, they incorporate things, change things, or let us know that, yeah, we're working on that. That's coming. Here's when we think that's going to come. And so,
Yeah. Yeah.
this is just another one of those milestones, the improvement on mapping in K1s. So it's
Yeah, that's
exciting
right.
to see.
And
Yeah.
when you guys asked us how quickly we were going to build that, I was like, I don't know, it might be 10 years or so. So I'm really grateful K1x came in to save our butts, because that one was going to take a long while. It is a
Yeah.
really complex form. And it was funny because I was like, guys, I don't even have the footnote data. Like, even if we have a
Right.
few hundred of these, but they're different, there's so many different types of footnotes. They're not standardized. I'm like, I don't know if we're ever going to be able to build this. So really grateful for the K1x team and the hard work they've done for, what did you say, Cameron? 18 years? How long was the product around for before the
The
K1x days?
platform is 17 years old.
That's
Yeah,
wild. And
yes.
that it takes that amount of data. I mean, it depends on how many K1s you're getting through, but it takes a lot of data to do this accurately when you have as many edge cases as you do. And so I feel super fortunate. It's already in the product. right? Like you guys can go and use it today and kick the tires, and it is the best in class technology in the industry. So really grateful to be working with a really talented team and excited to bring it to our group of users and like be able to just hand it to you guys here as we start tax season. Hopefully we will continue to over deliver on your expectations. We're going to keep pushing into our functionality. And I saw one of the questions in there. We just do 1040s. We'll do partnerships as well as 1120s, 1120s, and probably trusts. That's like last on my list, but we plan to launch all of those in May. So that is coming. And we already have a lot of it built, right? Like we can extract data from K1s. We can map to like on a Schedule C. We already have the UI built. So we are going to be building that during tax season when the features start to slow down because we don't want to launch a bunch of features and confuse everyone in the middle of tax season. So we'll be building that over the next few months, and we're planning to launch that in May. So that is coming very shortly. And we will use the same technology for partnerships as well, and probably trusts, because once we have all the extracted fields, it's really just a matter of mapping it to those different fields in the tax software. It's not, you know, something like, my engineers are going to kill me for saying this, but something like 70 or 80% of the work has been done already on that. And so we are planning to launch that this summer, and then people can kind of keep everything in-house. One last quick comment there. You can already use Advisor. If you want to upload a tax return to Advisor, you can upload corporate returns or partnerships or trusts, and you can actually evaluate those returns with Advisor. It actually does cover every type of return. And I use it for reviewing my business returns. One thing I do is I go in there and look at like some of the specific issues that are hard to review for, like foreign reporting or like special schedules, changes in like, you know, depreciation and things like that. I've got a prompt that I use to help me review business returns, and I find that to be really valuable. It doesn't cost you guys anything. It's in the product. So go kick the tires if you want to and try that out. That is a really, really cool part of our platform. We just don't talk about it that much because compliance work is really the center. I wish we did a better job of doing advisory work, but for small and mid-sized firms, compliance work is still actually the center of most of our services. So we generally consider that an afterthought at the moment, but it is a really powerful product. Okay, any other questions? Yeah, support at Juno.tax. I think Robin was asking about any issues. If you guys run into anything, go there for sure. We do see more issues this time of year. There's two ways. One, they're updating tax software like multiple times a day right now, so that's pretty challenging for us to stay on top of. And sometimes that breaks our integrations. We test every single day right now. Like we have a huge data set that we run through every piece of software, but there are still times where it's like, oh no, this field broke, and it takes us a couple hours to go fix it. The tax software, they're going to stop pushing updates in the next like 7 to 10 days. They generally just update all their forms at once. So that's just part of what we run into this time of year. But if you have any problems, send them to support at Juno.tax. The other quick comment I'll make is sometimes there are changes in forms that get uploaded. And so we also, this is kind of the perfect storm this time of year, where sometimes we have things hang up in processing because it's a different form type and our systems are trying to figure out if this is actually a W-2 or not. It's probably a bad example because that one doesn't change very often. But there are times where things hang up a little bit more. If you ever have any issues, just hit support and we'll respond to you within a few minutes. And then last thing, Tanishka was asking me to say this. We have boot camp as well, which is going to be like a training for people that they can join. That's going to be starting, I think, on February 2nd, she's saying. So here in just a few days, we do weekly office hours as well that you guys can drop into. We spend about 30 minutes doing like a 201. I go through basically like advanced user stuff. And then we spend the last half on questions that people have. So that's great if you or your staff want to come to those. They're open to everybody, and they're on Wednesdays. And I think Tanishka can drop that link in here too, and we'll email you guys afterwards with all the resources you have. You've also got the help center as well, and you can always hit support. So hit us up there. But Cameron, Evan, I just wanted to say, hey, thank you guys for taking the time to do this, and I hope our crew is as excited as our team is, the clients that we have, just because I'm really pumped to bring you guys some incredible technology just in time for tax season. I hope it saves you a ton of time. And Cameron, I appreciate the product work you put in here. It's pretty phenomenal. I don't think everyone can really appreciate that the way that we can in terms of how much work it is to put together this type of system. So thank you all for doing that and allowing us to make it available to our folks.
It's absolutely our pleasure. We're so excited about this partnership. I think we're definitely going places together. So I appreciate you having me here too.
I love it. All right, guys. And Evan, appreciate it as well. Thank you so much for the time, and for everybody. If you have other questions, you're welcome to send them to support, or you can contact anybody on our team, and we will follow up with a recording of this as well if you want to share it with your team. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks all.
Bye, guys.